All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're going to look at history through a purely economic lens. We're talking about how a medieval supply chain problem changed absolutely everything. I mean, we are literally going to trace the rise and fall of one of the most powerful cartels in human history. And the crazy part, we're going to see how a simple desire to flavor food ultimately redrew the borders of the entire known world. So, the core question we're tackling today is pretty fascinating. How did a consumer craving for a simple spice, something most of us have just sitting in our kitchen cabinets right now, how did that accidentally trigger the entire age of discovery? It sounds like a massive stretch, right? But as you'll see, the basic economics of supply, demand, and good old-fashioned price gouging are actually powerful enough to push humanity straight into the unknown. Okay, Section 1, the craving for spices, Europe's medieval addiction. To really get this, we have to go back to an unintended economic side effect of the Crusades in 1095. You see, those campaigns completely opened Europeans up to exotic new markets, and it sparked this massive demand for goods coming almost entirely from the Orient. European merchants, they quickly caught on. They started trading their everyday stuff, food, clothing, wool, metals, with Arab traders, all in exchange for these highly coveted items coming out of Asia. But this created a really tricky geographic puzzle. Europeans desperately wanted goods from the East, but they were completely blocked by massive geographic choke points. The Italian city-states, particularly Venice and Genoa, managed to snag landing facilities in the Near East, making them the absolute sole middlemen. So spices from the Moluccas would travel all the way to India, then overland by caravan to the Mediterranean coast, and finally onto Venetian ships. And the sheer volume of this trade, it was staggering. And it wasn't just for the ultra-wealthy either. Middle-class European eating habits were transformed basically overnight by these tangible goods just pouring in. I mean, we're not just talking about pepper, nutmeg, cloves, and cardamom. Suddenly they're getting figs, raisins, almonds, lemons, oranges, rice, and sugar. It completely revolutionized the medieval palate. Moving on to Section 2, the Venetian monopoly cornering the market. The Italian maritime city-states took this sudden explosion in demand and turned it into an absolute economic empire. In fact, they basically funded the entire explosion of creativity that we now call the Renaissance. To put the financial stakes into perspective here, a single large Venetian merchant galley, a galleass, coming back from Alexandria with its holds full, could carry a cargo valued at over 200,000 gold ducats. That's an astronomical fortune. The trade wasn't just great in volume, it was incredibly high in value. By completely dominating the major spice trade route, the one bringing goods up the Red Sea to Cairo and then over to their trading settlements in Alexandria, Egypt, the Venetians established a virtual, absolute monopoly over European markets. Basically, if you were a European noble or a merchant and you wanted spices, you had absolutely no choice. You had to go through Venice. Which brings us to Section 3, the 1453 supply shock, the chokehold tightens. So the main inciting incident of our story happens right here in 1453, when the global geopolitical map was flipped entirely on its head. When the Ottoman Turks captured Constantinople, they completely shut down the only alternative overland trade route. With the Byzantines out of the picture, the Egyptians became the absolute gatekeepers. Knowing they were now the only game in town, they slapped a staggering 33% tariff on all Eastern trade passing through their cities. Now, did Venice absorb this crazy cost? Absolutely not. The Venetians simply passed that massive tax right on down to their European customers. As you might guess, the rest of Europe deeply resented this setup. They were effectively blocked by what came to be called the Muslim curtain, this dividing line between Islamic empires and Christendom. And the combination of this geopolitical barrier and the Venetian price gouging left European kings and consumers completely at the mercy of the cartel. This was the perfect recipe for a major market disruption. Let's look at Section 4, searching for alternatives, disrupting the supply chain. History shows us pretty consistently that when markets are squeezed this tightly by a monopoly, desperate customers start looking for alternatives. For the exchequers of European kings, salvation meant just one thing: finding a brand new sea route to the Indies to bypass the Mediterranean entirely. Reaching Malacca, the fabled gateway to the Spice Islands, well, that was the ultimate prize to break the Venetian chokehold. I absolutely love this quote from the era because it hits the nail on the head regarding the economic warfare going on. He who is Lord of Malacca has his hand on the throat of Venice. The goal was simple:
literally cut the middleman out entirely. And so we see a fascinating two-pronged approach to breaking this monopoly emerge over on the Iberian Peninsula. Portugal, they looked south, aggressively trying to navigate all the way around the entire continent of Africa. Spain, on the other hand, gambled on a totally different strategy. Having just expelled the Muslims from Iberia in 1492, Spain started hiring seasoned out-of-work Italian navigators, guys from cities like Genoa on Italy's west coast, to just sail straight west across the Atlantic, completely into the unknown.
This economic race played out over a few pivotal centuries. You have the first spark of trade back in 1095, then the Venetian peak in 1204, right through that massive supply shock of 1453. It all finally climaxes in 1498, when Portugal's Vasco da Gama rounded Africa's Cape of Good Hope and actually reached India. The alternative route was finally found. And the immediate economic impact of that? It was staggering. As Portuguese explorers returned to Lisbon with these massive cargoes of spices from the Indian Ocean, they just flooded the market. This completely shattered the Egyptian-Venetian monopoly, crashing the price of pepper in Lisbon to less than 1/5 of the price in Venice. Which leads us to Section 5, an accidental new world, the ultimate unintended consequence. So meanwhile, Spain's incredibly disruptive startup attempt took up, well, a very different path. Led by an out-of-work Genuinan named Christopher Columbus, Spain's expedition completely missed Asia. Landing in the previously unknown Western Hemisphere, Columbus just assumed he'd hit his intended target. He mistakenly named the native inhabitants Indians because he thought he was in the Indies, and when he discovered their secret spicy plant chilies, he confidently named those red pepper. Now, at first, Spain was pretty disappointed and tried other attempts, like sending Magellan around the world. And Venice? Being the incredibly shrewd merchants they were, they didn't just roll over and give up. They adapted. To combat the Portuguese, Venice tried to pivot their market share north, literally moving their famous spice market to Antwerp and Amsterdam. By 1514, they were even allowing regular vessels to transport spices rather than just their official state galleys. But it just wasn't enough. The Spanish soon realized the sheer wealth of this accidental New World discovery. Not only did it have treasures, but it actually had the perfect climate to grow East Indian produce. This permanently shifted global wealth westward, and that impregnable Venetian monopoly, it eventually crumbled completely. History shows us time and again that when prices are just too high and businesses hold unfair monopolies, innovation always finds a way around the roadblock. I mean, it literally drove humanity to chart the globe. So looking at our modern economy, I want to leave you with this. What impregnable monopolies exist today? And what uncharted waters will innovators sail into to finally break them?